Chapter 4. Possible, 0 to 1 and 1 to 0, and impossible, 0 on 0 and 1 on 1. Opposites are not only dependent upon each other, they also define each other. See corollaries 1, 8, and 9. If the base for all opposites come from the interdependent binary 0 and 1, then it naturally follows that all opposites are also dependent upon each other. This dependency means that we can define and understand one of a pair of opposites only because we have defined and understood the other one. Neither can stand alone. Instead of trying to make nature match one opposite or the other, we should approach problems with the understanding that nature always uses both opposites. Instead of wanting only the good, positive, we should realize that nature oscillates between both good and bad, positive and negative. Knowledge and learning come from definitions perceived by the non-defined stage of ignorance as a necessary prior condition. If we have trouble defining one concept, it is often because we have not defined the opposite concept. This is important because the foundation of all nature and all action is an antonymic base. This gives us the symmetry necessary for understanding. As opposites, possible and impossible relate to the 0 and 1 and are defined through the force of attraction and repulsion. How many times in history has the seemingly impossible spurred the creation of the possible? How many problems are there today that we deem impossible to solve that are in reality quite possible? Would it be important to know the difference between possible and impossible? To know the difference, we need a better understanding of this salient pair of opposites. The impossible is defined as the repulsion effect of nature that does not allow us to proceed. In other words, the emission phase is not possible. This is precisely because our physical, 1, cannot be absorbed by another physical, 1, and our spatial arrangements, 0, cannot be displaced to reach absorption through another spatial form, another 0. This is the only thing preventing our successful arrival at a new location. For example, we know from experience that when any tangible part of us attempts to occupy another tangible, this can lead to a disaster. A catastrophic encounter can change our physical structure to the point where it will cease to oscillate, which means cease to live. Or we can destroy the spaces within us, so the spaces cannot fill and empty again. This is death. When we fail to find air to breathe or food to eat, this means our internal zeros are confronted with external zeros. Bad things of life arrive when blocked pathways lead to the inability to fill our spaces, absorb. We lose access to the possible when the 0 and 1 are unavailable for each other. Attraction is the availability of the 1 and 0 for our emission and absorption stages necessary for life. Does this mean that we should only have the possible and eliminate the impossible? Force of repulsion. In keeping with the mutual dependency of opposites, we must use both repulsion and attraction for achieving the possible. The impossible is used as a springboard to reach the possible. As children, we were constantly testing this force of repulsion. We got a lot of hard knocks before we began to understand where we could not go. What did this do for us? We used this knowledge of repulsion to understand the impossible, which guided us to the possible. Since we cannot know everything, we are continually confronted by the problem of finding the pathway for our emission to absorption process. The pathway of the possible, attraction, is defined by using the impossible, repulsion, as a border for seeing and understanding the 0 of where the 1 can go. Problems in life are problems of how to deal with the force of repulsion. The value of a problem is the opportunity to recognize the repulsion force and then to use it in guiding us to the solution, to the positive absorption. The act of walking is an example. We use the surface of the ground and its repulsion of our physical feet to push us forward into a step. This is an example of learning from where we cannot go to get to where we can go. This direct use of repulsion illustrates Newton's third law of motion. When the one of us pushes against the one of something else, we get pushed back by the same force. This is the one-on-one part of the force of repulsion. Without it, we could not reach the stage of emission or absorption. We use this force to achieve motion and to achieve absorption and arrival. We push where we cannot go to propel us to the zero of where we can go. And upon arrival, we have used where we cannot go to stop our motion. When we sit in a chair, we occupy its space and use its physical parts to hold our motion in a sitting position. A container uses its physical framework to do the containing. Containment uses the force of repulsion. There is no point in going somewhere if we do not have the means to contain ourselves when we get there. When using the one-on-one of an object relative to another object for demonstrating repulsion, it should be understood that the zero-on-zero of objects is also involved. The physical one container's repulsion against our physical one body shows only one side of repulsion. The other side of repulsion is the zero-on-zero, which is necessarily involved because the bodies of all objects are both 0 and 1. What may appear to only be the physical of an object is in reality a composite of combinations of zeros and ones at the microscopic level. Microcosmic level. When any object is being contained by another object, it is simultaneous expression of a one-on-one and a zero-on-zero repulsion effect. Nature gives us the impossible to reach the possible. We pay our dues in life when the problems of repulsion do not allow us to go where we want, but that let us see how to use repulsion to go where we want. Upon banging our heads against a brick wall, we gain greater knowledge of where we can go safely without pain. In a forest, the farmer has little room to plant his crops. Repulsion is rampant, so he clears the land using the trees to build a barn. The farmer uses repulsion and the impossibility of the forest to build the possibility of the barn. But the problem of the forest was necessary to reach the solution of the farm. If all we want are solutions, we are in the wrong universe. To get to a solution, we must first identify the problem. In a like manner, questions are necessary as prior conditions to answers. The value in what we dislike is in leading us to what we like. Anyone can observe that the bad things in life can be used to learn how to reach the good things in life. Understanding this principle leads to a more positive outlook on life. Instead of dwelling on the impossible, use the impossible as a springboard to the possible. The impossible can be used as a tool for learning. This is how we can learn to accept ourselves and achieve greater self-confidence. The confidence to accept that making mistakes and being wrong is unavoidable and part of what we are. The confidence to embrace the negative of a problem as an opportunity to gain the positive solution of knowledge. Imagine how one's self-reliance can increase when it is realized that the problem of the impossible is necessary to use the possible in reaching a solution. Human progress is dependent upon problems for reaching solutions. How often do people blame other people or other things for blocking the attainment of their goals? It is commonly believed that if this person or that thing would stay out of my way, then I would have the possibility of the motion necessary to reach my goals. If this person would just stop impeding my progress. I could get on with my life. People wait for the blockage to get out of the way, but each individual can change the impossible to the possible by creating zeros for his ones and ones for his zeros. Nature provides your problems for your solutions. By confronting these problems, we achieve knowledge and growth along with a sense of self-worth. When someone else, however, solves our problems, then the problem solver is the one who has made progress, not us. Waiting for others to change their ways is like waiting for a brick wall to get out of our way. And if, by some miracle, the wall moves out of our way, we have learned nothing and gained nothing. Instead, success will be found by moving to where the possible will happen. Use the obstruction as a guide to motion instead of as a stoppage. This is the way nature intended us to live. This is the way all creatures live. The impossible is always our only guide to the possible. An airplane's generation of lift is a useful example of how we use the impossible to get to the possible. The shape of the wings provides lift. The bottom part of the wing is flat with a curved top. The curve provides greater surface area for the molecules in the air to encounter. As the plane moves forward, both the bottom and top wing surfaces come in contact with the same number of air molecules. Because there is greater surface exposure on the top, the same number of particles move further apart on the bottom. More space between them creates a partial vacuum, zero, with respect to the amount of space between molecules above this vacuum. The vacuum zero creates the lift. The physical part of the air molecules cannot enter the physical part of the curved surface of the upper part of the wing. This encounter between the two is a one-on-one encounter with the physical part of the force of repulsion. It demonstrates the use of the impossible. The forces the air molecules to occupy the space, zero, next to this surface. Where they cannot go guides where they can go. The molecules use attraction from repulsion to take the only pathway, zero next to one of wing, that allows occupation. The impossible guides the possible. The greater distance between molecules on the top surface than on the bottom creates a greater empty, deficit, and negative condition. Wherever there is a deficit, negative, there is an adjacent excess, positive. The deficit, zero, of molecules at the top surface of the wing is in contrast to the excess, one, positive, and greater filled condition for molecules above this deficit. This results in attraction between more of a zero next to the wing and more of a one above it. These zeros and ones want to create a discharge to return to a balance between zeros and ones. Due to the plane's forward motion, the negative condition on the wing is created continuously as it comes in contact with new molecules. The shape of the wing with its motion does not allow the ones above to fill the zeros below. The zeros below also try to move up toward the ones above, and this creates aerodynamic lift. Because the zeros have been created by the curved surface of the wing, they have literally become a part of the wing. They are joined together because they depend upon one another. The one of the wing is dependent upon the zeros that define it, and conversely, the zero is a part of the airplane precisely because without it the airplane could not fly. It could not have lift. Because the wing is attached to the fuselage, when the zeros next to the surface of the wing move up in an attempt to be filled by the ones of molecules, the fuselage will move with it. This lift will continue because the forward motion of the airplane keeps this positive 1 and negative 0 attraction intact. The zeros attracted to and part of the airplane create an upward emission of the airplane in an attempt to reach absorption with the ones of the air molecules above. A balance and discharge between zeros and ones will occur when the airplane has landed and reached a state of absorption by the tarmac. Lift will not occur without this positive charge of an excess and negative charge of a deficit condition brought about by the airplane's forward motion. This forward motion is propelled by the engines, which also incorporate repulsion forces by the impossible and attraction forces to the possible. A sailboat sails on the same principle. The curved forward part of the sail creates the same type of vacuum, zero, as the top of the airplane wing. A part of the vessel's forward motion comes from its being pulled forward in the same way the airplane is pulled up. The physical part of the sail cannot occupy the physical part of the air molecules, an impossibility. Thus, the impossible guides the possible. The full one warehouse also pulls the empty zero truck to it. To be sure, it is really people who are responsible for the filling and emptying of the warehouse and truck. People are pulled to act because of the zeros and ones involved with attraction and repulsion. They, truck and warehouse, help in our survival the same way our arms and legs help in survival. The difference between arms and legs and the tools man uses for his emission and absorption is that he cannot remove them and put them away when he is through with them. But human appendages and tools are similar in the sense that they are used to attain emission and absorption. The holes that are an integral part of the physical warehouse, truck, airplane, and sailing vessel are dependent upon each other for their existence. These structures could never be built without these built-in spaces for absorption through emission. Holes are necessary part for the viability, corollary number 4, and integrity of all systems from the microcosm to the macrocosm. Because the ones of the warehouse cannot move to the truck, the zero of the truck moves to the ones. The filled truck moves to the zero of the retail store. Then humans purchase goods, 1, to fill their spaces, 0. There are continual oscillations between exchanges of the 0 for the 1 and the 1 for the 0. When an 18-wheeler passes a small car driving in the opposite direction, there are reactions flowing from a continuous change between zeros and ones. The former motion of the physical part of the truck, 1, competes with the air molecules' use of the 0. As air molecules are pushed aside, this excess comes in contact with a car driving in the opposite direction. The driver of the small car feels a lurch away from the truck as the excess molecules hit the car with repulsion. The force of repulsion transfers the motion of the molecules to the car, which causes the car to move to the 0 which it can occupy. At the rear of the truck, there is an opposite effect. Instead of the truck's forward filling, 1, and entering, we have behind the truck's emptying, 0, and leaving. As the truck empties the space, 0, behind it, it takes time for the air molecules to fill this 0. Because of the motion of the truck, the 0 of the empty behind is renewed constantly, and in effect, the 0 follows and is part of the area behind the truck. This is a creation of a vacuum. The motion of the truck or of any object is the one of an excess, 1 replacing a 0, creating forward, and a deficit, 0 replacing a 1, created behind the object. A continuous positive condition is created as the 1 of the truck displaces the 0 in front, and a continuous negative condition is created by the empty 0 behind the truck, 1. When the car passes the rear of the truck, the driver feels his car lurch forward the hole behind the truck. The car first lurches away from and then forward the truck. The hole behind the truck produces a vacuum, and the one of the car responds by trying to enter the vacuum, 0. This shows the interaction of the two forces. First, the effects of the one-on-one part of repulsion at the front of the truck, and then the effects of the 1-to-0 of attraction at the back of the truck. The larger mass of the truck, with its larger resulting hole, means that the car will be pushed away at the front of the truck and pulled toward the hole in back. The 0 of the truck is also attracted to the 1 of the car. The 1 of the car and the 1 of the truck each attracts the 0 of the other. The car's motion also produces a 1 effect and a 0 effect behind the car. This interchange of 0 and 1 is fundamental to all objects in motion. A significant question arises: could this explain magnetic effects? A current of electricity represents the motion of electrons, and this produces a magnetic effect around the wire conducting the electrons. Placing the magnetic needle of a compass next to this current will cause the needle to move. A magnet itself is said to be an expression of motion in the same direction with the atomic structure that is part of the makeup of the magnetic needle. Notice the duality of a north and south pole of a magnet. Are these two poles an expression of motion's alignment of zeros and ones in the same direction? If a truck's motion always aligns its ones and zeros in the same way, then why cannot electrons do so in current where their motion is in the same direction? Is motion the physical part of an object's use of the pathway of nothing that changes the 0 forward to a 1 and at the same time a 1 to a 0 behind? Is the magnet an expression of the same direction of motion, its internal atomic motion, and does this show us the empty, deficit, and negative at one pole, and the full, excess, and positive at the other pole? Is a magnet another expression of this binary 0 and 1 foundation of nature? Is all physical motion demonstrating the changing relationship of a 0 to a 1 forward and a 1 to a 0 behind? The homogeneous motion of a magnet with its pole duality reinforces to me the prospect of a binary universe that operates on a matrix of zeros and ones. This will be added to in the future chapter. We become aware of absorption after emission when this continuous change between the 1 and the medium 0 it uses for emission comes to a halt. Then the continuous emergence of zeros behind and the disappearance of zeros forward is discontinued upon arrival. Therefore, emission continuous defines absorption, and absorption discontinuous defines emission. The continuous nature of motion defines non-motion, and the discontinuous nature of non-motion defines motion. Continuous defines discontinuous, and conversely. If opposites occurred simultaneously, they could not define each other. There could be no sensing of a difference, contrast necessary for using our senses if they were able to occur at the same instant. We can now say that emission and absorption are opposites and define each other with respect to the way the physical uses the non-physical. I will now move to the arena of natural philosophy as it relates to science and technology. The same picture will be used to solve some of the paradoxes that seem to defy explanations. The same binary 0 and 1 principles for humans and biological processes will apply to the world of physics. I will show this relationship to be a corroboration of the rightness of this new view of nature. A better view of nature provides a better foundation for integration. My obsession with these ideas began with the realization that the same rules and concepts apply to both the animate and inanimate worlds. This, for me, was a most compelling evidence for validation.